turns red. Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Good afternoon, everybody. I call this hearing to order. I request unanimous consent that the chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Today, our subcommittee is meeting both in person and remotely. I want to be clear about what makes this format possible. First, the wide availability of vaccines and boosters throughout the United States, and specifically to the members and staff of this committee. Second, the regular and continued adherence to recommended health and safety protocols. This pandemic is by no means over, but we have reached a point where we can safely engage in person if certain practices are followed. This information previously was provided to members and staff, but I want to reiterate what the committee will require in order for members and staff to participate in this hearing in person. 1, if you are unvaccinated or your vaccination status is undetermined, you must wear a mask at all times. 2, if you are unvaccinated or your vaccination status is undetermined, you must maintain physical distance within the hearing room. 3, if you are feeling unwell, you should participate in the hearing remotely. And 4, members are permitted to be accompanied by 1 staff member while they're present in the hearing room. During the covered period declared by the Speaker pursuant to House Resolution 8, remote participation in hearings will continue to be an option for members. For those members participating remotely, if you're experiencing connectivity issues, please make sure you or your staff contact our designated technical support staff so those issues can be resolved immediately. Members participating remotely must continue to remain visible on camera for the duration of their participation in the hearing unless they experience connectivity issues or other technical problems that render the member unable to fully participate on camera. It is committee policy that members participating remotely will remain muted when not recognized, and for those in the hearing room, the policy remains the same, that only members who are recognized or seeking recognition should unmute their microphone. This is out of courtesy to all members on the committee, and so that background noise does not interfere with another member who is recognized to speak. When you are recognized, whether in the hearing room or on the remote platform, you'll need to unmute your microphone and pause for 2 to 3 seconds before speaking so that your words are captured on the live stream. Without objection, members will be recognized in order of committee seniority for questioning witnesses today. With that out of the way, I want to welcome everyone to today's Economic Opportunity Subcommittee Oversight hearing entitled Modernizing Veteran Education in the Shadow of COVID-19. Today, our subcommittee will review VA's progress in designing and implementing a number of tools to streamline veterans' access to their education assistance benefits. Over the last few years, this subcommittee in Congress answered the calls of advocates to address issues related to claims processing and student protections for the various educational assistance benefits that VA administers. We passed numerous bills to support this effort, including my legislation, the Johnny Isaacson and David P. Rowe Veterans Health Care and Benefits Improvement Act of 2020, which included significant new student protections. We authorized substantial funding for GI Bill modernization projects, including $243 million in the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act. In response to the uptick in veteran unemployment at the beginning of the pandemic, we approved new initiatives like the Veterans Rapid Retraining Assistance Program, or VRAP, to help get veterans ready for high-demand jobs. We also passed the Responsible Education Mitigating Options and Technical Extensions, or REMOTE Act, at the end of 2021 to extend COVID student protections through the 2022 spring semester. On the agency side, the Veterans Benefits Administration and the VA Office of Information Technology partnered to develop what we refer to as the Digital GI Bill. This platform will enable VA to call, email, text, and chat with GI Bill beneficiaries, grant immediate access to beneficiary records, and respond to questions from colleges and universities instantaneously. Currently, VA disperses the nearly $12 billion it processes annually in veteran education benefits through 23 legacy computer systems. Claims processors are often required to toggle between numerous systems, many of which do not communicate with each other, leaving adjusters to manually transfer and input data. I've seen this myself, and they do an amazing job, but it is less than ideal. These non-communicative systems easily open themselves up to manual error, while adding lengthy workarounds that delay benefit awards. GI Bill beneficiaries often must wait for weeks before hearing back on their claims, holding up more than just their tuition. These claims include monthly housing allowances, books and supplies stipends, rural benefits, apprenticeship and on-the-job training reimbursements, and more. In March of 2021, VA awarded a contract to Accenture Federal Services to support the Digital GI Bill project and create a more user-friendly platform for both students and institutions enrolled in VA educational assistance programs. This digital platform intends to unite the numerous legacy systems, bringing together activities like payments, enrollments, and oversight at higher functioning levels. This modernization effort is multi-year and has been planned to take place over many program increments, or PIs, with several releases to implement and launch larger programs. For instance, the GI Bill comparison tool redesign, one key part of the overall modernization effort, was released earlier this year and provides students with an improved interface. Students are now able to compare institutions side by side and via a map feature to determine which facility location may best meet their needs. VA and Accenture are using human-centered design principles to collect user feedback to inform future designs, communications, and training requirements. Staff from both our Economic Opportunity and Technology Modernization subcommittees are briefed monthly on the contract's execution and are pleased with the progress being made to develop these tools, which will improve VA customer service and the veteran experience. We look forward to hearing updates from VA today about how it might be able to translate the success the Department has seen so far with the Digital GI Bill project to other modernization efforts the agency is undertaking. We're also interested in learning how VA and its partners plan to future-proof the digital solutions that are in development to ensure they don't become obsolete in years to come. And finally, the committee and VSOs have been interested in consolidating programs further to bring fairness and equity to education benefits. We've already moved to sunset Montgomery GI, but further changes may be needed, such as folding Chapter 35 beneficiaries into the Forever GI Bill. It's critical that we consider how such changes may impact the Digital GI Bill project and vice versa. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses, so I'll conclude my remarks there, and I'll recognize my friend, Ranking Member Moore, for his introductory comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to you, Mr. Chairman Mervan, for hosting this hearing on modernization of GI Bill. Since its inception after World War II, the GI Bill has helped millions of service members, veterans, and their dependents access higher education and training that helps transform our economy, me being one of those. While the GI Bill has gone through multiple iterations over the years, the current post-9/11 benefit helps ensure that many beneficiaries can complete their studies without taking on significant student loan debt. I'm pleased that on today's second panel, we will hear from the VSO partners about how they believe the benefit can be upgraded to meet the needs of student veterans in today's modern economy. I'm also pleased to see that innovative programs like the VTech pilot program continues to be successful. I believe VTech is a model for future programs that focus students on getting a job at the end of their training. This should be the goal of any GI Bill program. I also agree that many of those testifying today that we must continue to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars by ensuring that the GI Bill funds go to those schools and training programs that are truly providing quality instruction at a reasonable price. GI Bill benefits are not infinite, and we must make sure student veterans are protected regardless of the school's profit status. That is why I am proud that yesterday the full committee favorably reported out my bill, H.R. 7074, the Quality Education for Veterans Act, and that will give additional tools to investigators to prevent bad schools from being approved for benefits. I am also cognizant that many of the benefit expansions being proposed today may need mandatory offsets to be identified before they can move forward. I look forward to working with stakeholders to find those offsets so we can comply with the pay-as-you-go rules that ensure that Americans know their taxes are being used appropriately. Finally, I would like to address the digital GI Bill system that is being developed by the VA. It's called Accenture. I know we have all heard stories in the past of IT failures. Me being a freshman, I've heard a few myself. But processing the GI Bill benefits seems like Accenture is working well. The latest of these failures occurred in 2018 and resulted in thousands of students waiting for weeks and months, in some cases, for their claim to be processed. These delays led to financial hardships and undue stress being placed on our students. This was unacceptable then, and it's certainly unacceptable today. However, the digital GI Bill seems to be a success so far. More than a year into the project is delivering new capabilities, staying on schedule, and only slightly over budget. The digital GI Bill is replacing old systems and adding new capabilities. It has already automated the majority of the supplemental claims, and it will soon start automating original claims, which are much more complicated. We don't get to say too many good things very often about the VA information technology projects, but the digital GI Bill is a great example, one that's working. This is part because the committee has been conducting strict oversight since even before the project began. We're going to keep it up. Most of the difficult milestones are still to come. and we're going to push the VA and Accenture to live up to those high expectations. I'm looking forward to hearing from our witnesses about their progress on the new system and about the safeguards that have been put in place to ensure that delays from the past never occur again. It is well beyond time to retire and replace the legacy systems that are older than any of the people in this room. Well, most of us, I guess, sir. I thank the chairman for holding this hearing, and I look forward to positive discussion today. And with that, sir, I'll yield back.
I thank the ranking member for his opening statement. We'll jump right in. For our first panel today, we'll hear from the Department of Veterans Affairs. First, we have Ronald Burke, Deputy Undersecretary for the Office of Policy and Oversight for the Veterans Benefits Administration. He's accompanied by Ricardo Da Silva, the Program Integration Officer for Education Services in the Veterans Benefits Administration. Welcome back, Mr. Da Silva. Nice to see you. He's also accompanied by Mr. Dan McCune, Executive Director for Software Product Management, and Mr. Rob Orifici, Benefits and Memorial Services Portfolio Director from the VA Office of Information Technology. Thank you all for being here. Before we get started, I want to express again how important I think it is that you all hear from the veteran service organizations and education advocates on our second panel. So I encourage you to stay to listen to them. Hopefully you can. Mr. Burke, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Levin and Mervan, Ranking Members Moore and Rosendale, and other members of the subcommittees. Thank you for inviting us here today and allowing us the opportunity to discuss the Department of Veterans Affairs activities in the modernization of education benefits. Joining me today are Dan McCune, Executive Director of Software Product Management with VA's Office of Information and Technology, or OINT, Robert Orifici, Benefits and Memorials Portfolio Director with VA's OINT, and Ricardo Da Silva, Program Integration Officer with the Veterans Benefits Administration Education Service. VA education benefits are well-deserved and vital in assisting veterans and their families achieve their academic and career objectives. Therefore, modernization of benefits delivery and adjudication is crucial. While COVID-19 presented numerous unforeseen challenges, modernization helped ensure there was minimal disruption in education benefit delivery. We thank Congress for legislative efforts to assist with the resources needed for modernization, as the positive outcomes are indisputable. Prior to the pandemic, VA understood the limitations of using legacy IT systems and manual processes for the over 800,000 GI Bill beneficiaries each year. The demands created by COVID-19 fast-tracked modernization efforts, and VA is committed to even further improvement through modernization of its legacy systems. In fact, VA's OINT is not only modernizing education benefits, but other large-scale modernization efforts such as electronic health record modernization, financial management business transformation, supply chain, and building a modernization plan to support the PACT Act. Those efforts are currently taking place. To assist with the education modernization effort through the Digital GI Bill, or DGIB, a contract was awarded to Accenture Federal Services in March of 2021. VA also obligated $195 million of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Secures, or CARES Act funding, to support the DGIB modernization effort. The goal of this transformation effort is to develop a modern digital platform, leveraging cloud-based automation, digital service transformation, human-centered design, world-class communications, analytics, and other important IT services. This end-to-end system integration greatly reduces the manual burden and allows for enhanced automation of benefits processing. It will also enable VA to accelerate decommissioning of the Benefits Delivery Network, BDN, and the Bull mainframe in late 2023, something it has been trying to do for nearly 30 years. In September 21, VA successfully deployed the processing of post-9/11 GI Bill claims to the DGIB managed service, marking the first major milestone in the modernization journey. VA has made significant improvements in claims processing automation through subsequent releases. And just to provide a few examples, automation of post-9/11 GI Bill supplemental claims processing is up 23% compared to March in 2019. VA estimates the number of records processed through automation this fiscal year is over 1.3 million claims, and 300,000 GI Bill students are now able to verify enrollment via email or text message. VA's automation efforts to this point have created more streamlined processes, updated tracking systems, eliminated redundancies, and reduced overall manual intervention. Future releases will allow for a more streamlined application process, improved processing times, and faster eligibility decisions and entitlement adjudications. VA has also recently modified its contract with Accenture Federal Services to reprioritize the digital GIB program timeline for support of emerging requirements and the optimization of the veteran's experience. VA is applying a human-centered design approach to modernization and is utilizing user feedback to guide its platform development process. These efforts include focus groups, user feedback sessions, and usability testing sessions with participants across multiple stakeholder groups. VA has tested over 80 design features with users to understand pain points and optimize the user experience. VA modernization is also not just confined to implementation of new legislation and improvement of claims processing. We've made great advances in its ability to effectively speak directly to and with students, schools, and other stakeholders. Chairman, we will continue to improve education benefits delivery through enhanced modernization. We will seek continuous improvement through stakeholder feedback, lessons learned, and outside industry best practices. These efforts have already shown to bear fruit and will continue to do so through future generations of our nation's veterans and their families. Thank you for your continued support of our programs and for this opportunity to speak today. This concludes my testimony, and I welcome any questions that you or other members of the subcommittee may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. With that, I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes to begin the question portion of the hearing. Thank you for your testimony. Prior to the pandemic, I got to go to Muskogee and see the Regional Processing Center. I saw those systems. I think they were using COBOL programming language for one of them, and it was quite an ordeal to do what should have been pretty simple things. I was really amazed that the men and women who worked there were able to get their jobs done at all. And I was encouraged that we were able to help get the resources necessary to begin the improvements that were long overdue. Can you talk us through how practically the Digital GI Bill project streamlines all the disparate systems that I saw, literally from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and hopefully how it's made the student veteran approvals more efficient and speedier?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question, and also thank you for your kind comments about the staff in Muskogee. VBA believes we do have the finest workforce in the federal government, so thank you for recognizing that. I will partner this response with Mr. McCune from OINT. I will tell you that one of the things that we have established is an outstanding partnership with all involved in the Digital GI Bill modernization. Through our requirements building process, through our executive steering committee, which meets every Friday, we are outlining dependencies. We are talking about all of the moving pieces that are required to be attended to in order to effectuate the modernization of Digital GI Bill. With that, we're able to call out items that require a lot of background work, specifically the BDN retirement at the end of September 2023, which, by the way, we're on track to meet that target. But we have a lot of collaboration. We're calling out all risks and dependencies. We're tracking those in weekly steering committee reports, elevating risks, and assigning owners to each of these dependencies. And I'll ask Mr. McCune if he wants to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. So indeed, OINT is looking at opportunities to modernize our systems, start to consolidate them. Certainly the Digital GI Bill is one of those efforts, and we are seeing some of that consolidation happening, moving some of that to the vendor.
Still using COBOL?
As a COBOL programmer, sir, thank you for the question. No, we're trying to move away from COBOL, and particularly as we retire BDN, we will retire one of those COBOL systems.
No personal offense intended by bringing that up. Mr. De Silva, I'll turn to you. Really want to thank you for the work you're doing to streamline the enrollment and benefit for vet tech. Processing these claims seems to be going better, which is great. We have heard concerns from institutions that approvals for new programs and modalities are significantly delayed or perhaps not happening at all. Could you comment, and if these delays are in fact being reported accurately, to what do you attribute them?
Thank you for the question. So, in particular, with the VetTech approvals team, which is what you are referencing, they currently have a pending workload of about 35 approval packages running about 80 days. And so, what we're doing to mitigate that and to speed up that process is offering overtime to employees. We're bringing on additional help with those education liaison representatives to ensure that we're prioritizing appropriately and getting to those packages. And then finally, brokering work where we can to, again, bring that timeliness down to an acceptable target.
So just so I'm clear, how many FTE do you currently have working on the VetTech program and the approvals? And what other programs are those FTE tasked with managing?
That team handles federal approvals and foreign approvals and federal approvals. So if a federal entity has an on-the-job training program or apprenticeship, that team handles it too. I believe we can get you the exact numbers on the FTE, but they are down a couple of folks.
Ballpark?
I believe it's a team of six, and they're down a couple.
What's the average wait time for a new approval to be completed?
It's about 81 days presently.
81 days. So how many FTE do you think would be necessary to clear the backlog in program approvals? And how do you think that this backlog is actually affecting veterans on the ground?
Sir, happy to take that back and provide the committee with additional information and a briefing on how the approvals process works. I will tell you, often when we talk about a pending package, there's still additional information needed from the provider who has submitted, so that can take some time as well, but certainly happy to provide a more in-depth briefing.
Thank you. I appreciate that back. Or we'll follow up with you and take that back. And with that, I'll recognize my friend, the ranking member, for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Burke, the committee staff continues to monitor the wait times for beneficiaries calling the GI Bill hotline. Wait times continue to increase, my understanding. They're averaging about 25 minutes most days, but as of last week, I think we had somebody call they waited about 45 minutes. Certainly, this wouldn't be acceptable. You know, I'm concerned headed into the fall semester as students start calling and trying to get in and get their benefits. What's the department's plan for reducing the wait times, and what steps can be taken to kind of increase the urgency?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question. I can tell you right now that the average this fiscal year for the waiting time is about 6 minutes. We have had 3 or 4 specific incidents throughout the course of this fiscal year that really spiked the call volume and the wait times. The other thing that's coupled with the couple of items that have caused, we had a statements of benefits issue that caused a spike in phone calls. We had inquiries related to the University of Arizona Global Campus that caused some spikes. One of the things that we are doing is moving faster on filling our critical vacancies. In fact, we have more than 40 claims agents that will be joining the phone calls later this month, starting at 2 hours a day, so that'll take some of the phone call volume down. And we're about 35 full-time employees short, but deep in the recruitment process to bring us up to our authorized ceiling. We're also offering overtime, so using overtime, filling critical vacancies, and a large class of folks new to the phones at the end of this month will help with that, sir.
I got you. So you're looking at about 40 agents. What's the total personnel load right now as far as the agents doing that?
So the resource allocation model, the ceiling, if you will, is about
Yes.
300 full-time employees. Right now, we're 28 below that. Like I said, a lot of those are folks that are new in their journey.
Right.
So their productive capacity is slightly lower. The good news is, over the course of time, their productive capacity will increase, thus allowing them to take some more.
The chairman knows about these new employees. He gets that from us freshmen all the time. But and I understand that the hiring issues, trying to find people right now. I was just curious as a percentage. So can you provide an update for me on the VA and Accenture moving forward from the BEDN software system?
Yes, sir. I'm going to refer that question to our OINT partners, Mr. McCune.
Okay.
Thank you for the question, sir. I will start, and then I will hand it off to my colleague, Mr. Rifficy, who's a little closer to the details. But yeah, we're excited to be retiring one of our COBOL systems, BDN. We've been working on this for a number of years. We will retire BDN in about the fall of next year, and then following that, about a year later, that mainframe system as well.
So thank you for that question. So there's two parts to the BDN that are really supporting education benefits right now. One is the payment component for the Chapter 33 benefits, and the others are the full processing and adjudication for the legacy benefits around Chapter 30, Chapter 35. And so the Accenture program with Digital GI Bill is pulling off those other benefit programs onto their service providing. And then the other part, we have an ongoing modernization effort with Empower, which is the financial transaction system at the VA, which will take over the payment transactions portions of these benefits. And that is currently on schedule and on pace with the Digital GI Bill as well.
Okay, thank you with that, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back a minute.
Thank the ranking member, and I will now recognize the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, Chairman Takano, for his questions.
Well, thank you, Chairman Levin. Mr. De Silva, I must say how pleased I am to hear that automation efforts have dramatically improved claims processing time and efficiency. So just tell me, what is the VA's ideal processing time for GI Bill claims?
Thank you for the questions. Our targets today are 24 days for original claims and 12 days for supplemental. But I'm happy to say that given the work that Mr. Burke outlined and our OINT partners, that is down to 12.6 days for originals and 5.3 days for supplemental claims, and that's fiscal year to date.
So let me get this straight, 24 days for original claims, 12 for supplemental claims, but you have basically cut down the processing time to half for each, so it looks like to me. So I'm curious how efficient and automated we can get the system to go. What would be a perfect win in your mind?
Sir, I think there's always room for improvement there. I think our veterans expect their decisions faster and quicker. I know through the project there are automation goals and there are opportunities to streamline our processes. So coming up in one of our next releases, we'll have the opportunity to actually revamp that original claims process to be able to provide that decision much faster to a veteran. And so I think that's something we're excited about, and that's something we've heard through the HCD sessions and through conversations with our stakeholders, that we need to be able to provide these benefits faster, quicker, and more accurately.
Well, what would that be? I mean, I know you don't want to put yourself, but if you put out a number, I mean, you can do, you've gone from 12 to 24 to 12 and 12 to 5, and original to supplemental claims respectively. What could they be? What is a perfect win in your mind?
Sir, I'm going to ask Mr. Burke to provide additional details.
Thank you, sir, for that question. If I could put it in perspective, right now we are doing in the supplemental claims completions, about 56% of that work is being automated. But to put that in perspective, the total number of claims that have been processed, supplemental claims, is 2.3 million. 56% of those have been done through automation, which means we've done 1.3 million through automation. Our goal through the Digital GI Bill modernization is to get to at least 80% of that overall supplemental work, and then at least 50% of the original workload. With respect to what that looks like in timeliness, I think a reduction in the current improved numbers will be expected. I can't give you where I think that number will be, but I can tell you it should be an improvement based on the already improved numbers that we referenced today.
Okay. Looks like I'm not going to get a number out of you guys. Well, you kind of get, my next question was what kind of work needs to be done to get us from where we are today, 12 days, 12.5 days for original claims to the goal you want to get. But it sounds like you told me that you want to move up the percentage of automated claims, because you're still doing a lot of claims manually, it sounds like.
Yes, sir. So it's a multi-pronged approach. Automation is certainly a big piece of that, but we also believe that as part of the modernization efforts, the abilities to communicate more effectively with student veterans and the institutions is part of what's going to help us facilitate improved claims processing. When I talk about 80% supplementals and 50%, that's not where we want to stop. We won't be satisfied until we, continue to improve. But it's the combination of automation and then all the tools and technologies and the communication improvement as part of the DGI bill modernization that'll help get us there.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield back, and maybe we'll go for another round.
Thank you. I thank the chairman for his attendance, his leadership, and his questions. Now we'll recognize Mr. Cawthorn for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Burke, following up on what Chairman Takano was talking about, you've mentioned that you want to automate about 50% of original claims and 80% of supplemental claims. My question is, what do you believe is the timeline for achieving this goal?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question. So recently, we worked together, OINT, Accenture, VBA, to take a look at our roadmap, and we decided that we wanted to make a few changes, make a rescoping adjustment, if you will, to actually pull automation closer to now instead of at the end of the program. Over the next 24 months, we have plans to implement a lot of additional modernization efforts, but we took a strategic approach to pulling automation closer. And now, as we just finished 2 large contract modifications, we're in the process of mapping out the roadmap, but the intent is to pull automation features closer to today instead of at the end of the 24 months. So we're working feverishly on that. We want more automation faster, so we had to rescope just a little bit.
Copy that. So let me ask, as a follow-up to that, what, if anything, do you need from Congress to be able to achieve that goal faster or be able to reach that achievement?
Well, thank you for the support and the question. I think the fact that we are in a position to have made the successes and the improvements that we made is because of your support. We ask for the continued support. Right now, we have a very challenging project that we're deeply involved in that's finishing this modernization effort, and we're confident in our ability to deliver. But thank you for your support and the support of Congress at large.
Well, that is great to hear. Mr. Berg, thank you for being with us today. Can you tell us more about your support for the shallow subsidy program and how this program has assisted at-risk veterans over the last few years?
I can take that back, sir. I don't think I have an answer for you on that today.
Copy that. I was actually asking Mr. Berg. I apologize.
I am
Okay,
Mr.
never
Burke.
mind.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
thank you.
okay.
Thank you
No
very
worries.
much.
Thank you, sir.
Does the gentleman yield?
Gentleman yields back.
Thank the gentleman, and I'll recognize the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Cherflos McCormick, for her 5 minutes.
Thank you so much for being here and all the great work that you do. You talked about some of the people that you're seeing with the GI Bill. How can we advance and make it actually easier and help us reach the full competency for everyone who's looking for access and has questions? Do you have any suggestions or recommendations?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your question and your interest in this specific regard. One of the things that we're doing as part of modernization is improving access to our benefits, but our communication as well. Within Education Service, and largely thank you to Mr. De Silva and his team, they have created a robust communications plan. We have created electronic verification of enrollment, so there's a lot of electronic communications with folks. We have, with our school certifying officials, there are newsletters, town hall meetings, a lot of communications, I believe a Facebook page. And so part of what we're doing is within the modernization is being more transparent, opening up avenues for folks to contact us, and we believe that has been a large part of the improved processing times, increased communication, and our modernization effort has a lot more of that over the next 24 months.
Thank you so much. I yield back my time.
With that, I'll recognize the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Trone, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congress authorized over $35 billion to tackle the coronavirus-related challenges through CARES Act, American Rescue Plan funding. The VA wisely chose to use $250 million to modernize their services, making it easier for vets to access services and benefits. Now, Mr. Burke, could you briefly share some lessons learned from the development and implementation of these IT services? And how do you keep Accenture accountable to track how and when this money was spent?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. I will also tag team this with my partners from OINT. First and foremost, we have a very tight governance process. That governance process manifests itself into a every Friday briefing where the briefing, I receive the briefing. It's from all of the partners in the Executive Steering Committee where we're talking about milestones. We're tracking every bit of our roadmap and our confidence level with each release. With that, we're tracking, as I may have mentioned already, all of our dependencies, all of the appropriate folks, decision makers, responsible parties are in that steering committee. We have tight controls over the governance body, if you will. When issues are raised, they are addressed by OINT leadership, Accenture leadership, VBA leadership appropriately and timely. And for any more information on that, Mr. McCune, if you'd like to add anything, please feel free.
Yes, thank you for the question. So we do have a tight governance structure in place, and primarily OINT is looking at things like security, integration, and the acquisition as well to make sure that we're monitoring the technical implementation. OIT is also very involved in the upstream and downstream interfaces to the digital GI Bill system. So we do work hand in hand with both the VBA and the customer and the vendor to make sure that we've got tight coverage over all the implementation details. Thank you.
That's good. That's great to hear. It sounds like you're all over it. It's helpful to have these best practices. You can apply them to your next project. So how have the vets responded to these changes? And do you have an example of a change you made in response to a complaint or complaints from our vets about the new system and how you reacted to it?
Yes, sir. As part of our modernization efforts, we do invest a lot in the human-centered design and the user feedback. I'm going to ask Mr. De Silva to give a few examples, but I will tell you at large, the feedback has been positive. We're allowing folks to have input in how we develop these modernization efforts. The feedback from veterans, the feedback from the state agencies and the folks that we interact with, all stakeholders, has been extremely positive. And Mr. De Silva, if you'd like to give a few examples, that'd be great. Thanks.
No, thank you for the question. I think in particular, through the Digital GI Bill, one piece of success in getting feedback from students has been that ability to verify their enrollment electronically. While it sounds sort of old school to think that, you know, folks communicate with their phone, this has been a real breakthrough in our ability to send text messages, to do it by email, as opposed to how this may have been done in the past via phone or otherwise. And so in rolling that out, today we have an over 98% opt-in rate for students who are doing that electronically, either via text or email, and then doing that every month at over 98%. So that gives us, you know, more ability to do other work that we've talked about, but then also really is responsive, again, to what veterans told us they wanted and how they engage and interact with VA.
Yeah, that really wasn't responsive to my question at all. The question is, what screwed up? What screwed up? What didn't work? And how'd you hear about it? Then how'd you fix it? Because we can all pat ourselves in the back all day, and we're going to go nowhere. We got to look for problems and get solutions. So what did you find? If you didn't find anything, that's a bad sign because you're not listening and looking. Try it again.
Sir, you're exactly right. I think some of the feedback that we heard is that we weren't easy to access. We weren't timely in our responses. Processing of claims took too long. And our way of communicating was outdated. And so I think part of what we've done to fix that is the electronic notifications, the automation efforts that we've deployed. And quite frankly, we're investing in human-centered design to a degree that we weren't before. I don't think we were listening to our customers to the degree that we are today. So we did listen, we have heard, and we have implemented changes that have led to some tangible results. And I hope that answers your question a little better, sir.
That's much better. I mean, the whole focus is what's broken, and that's what you want. You want the problems so you can learn from them and improve. And just patting ourselves in the back is not worth the time. So this is great. We're moving in a good direction. So thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thank my friend, the gentleman from Maryland. I think if there are no further members for the first panel, we can excuse the first panel, though, as I said, I encourage you to stick around to hear from our VSOs and our education advocates. We can go ahead and switch everybody out. We'll now begin our second panel, consisting of representatives from veteran service organizations and veteran education advocates. First, we have Will Hubbard, Vice President for Veteran and Military Policy at Veterans Education Success. Good to see you. Next, we have Joseph Sharp, Director of Veterans Education and Employment at the American Legion. Welcome back, Mr. Sharp. I'll now recognize Congresswoman Chairfulus McCormick to introduce our next witness.
Mr. Chairman, I'm proud to introduce our witness, Ms. Rosa Miller, who is testifying on behalf of Broward College. Ms. Miller is a Senior Director of Financial Aid Advising at the Broward College. She has over 20 years of experience in post-secondary education, with the last 2 years being in Broward College. She has served as the Veterans Administration School certifying official, providing customer service and guidance to veterans and military students. Broward College is a public community college located in Broward County. Broward College offers over 150 programs of study, programs ranging in duration from a few weeks to a baccalaureate degree. More than 60% of its students attend the college part-time and are typically full-time or part-time working adults. Broward College serves more than 58,000 students annually. Nearly 1,000 students each year are veteran students with the GI Bill and other military benefits. Broward College is a minority-serving institution. Over 45% of the students are first-generation degree-seeking students, and 52% of the students are eligible for Pell Grants. In 2021 through 2022 academic year, Broward College awarded over 14,000 credentials to students, and students earned over 1,200 industry-recognized credentials. Broward College is often recognized for its excellence in serving students. In June of this year, the Aspen Institute named Broward College one of its 10 finalists for a coveted 2023 Aspen Prize for Community Colleges for Excellence, an honor that follows Broward College's recognition as an Aspen finalist 4 times prior. Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time, and I'm excited to have Ms. Miller here today.
Thank you, Representative Chairfulus McCormick, and thank you for joining us today, Ms. Miller. And finally, we have Justin Monk, Director of Policy for Student Veterans of America. Welcome back, Mr. Monk. Thank you all for joining the subcommittee today. And with that, I'll now recognize Mr. Hubbard for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairmans Levin and Mervan, Ranking Members Moore and Rosendale, and members of the subcommittee. We thank you for the opportunity to share our perspective about modernizing veteran education in the shadow of COVID-19. Veteran education success works on a bipartisan basis to advance higher education success for veterans, service members, and military families, and to protect the integrity and promise of the GI Bill and other federal education programs. Here's the question we must be asking ourselves. Is VA equipped to deliver veterans and their families with the best quality education and training that they deserve? There are many details of modernization we address in our written testimony and which need careful oversight. But beyond those, I would like to offer two overarching themes that should be kept in mind when it comes to the modernization efforts at VA. First, fraud remains a major problem within the current system of education and training providers. And second, it is critical for VA systems to have a reporting and outcomes metrics built in from the very beginning of implementation efforts. On fraud, student veterans continue to face the threat of predatory actors in higher education, even amidst VA's efforts to modernize and improve benefits. Most recently, the FBI raided facilities of the House of Prayer chain of schools. It remained approved for GI Bill for more than a week after the FBI raid. Described by students as a cult, the school's leaders amassed a fortune over more than a decade of fraud, acquiring several multi-million-dollar homes across the country, all paid for by GI Bill and Veterans Disability checks. The problem is statutory standards are so outdated that they reference courses taught over the radio. There are several common sense requirements that could be added for the GI Bill to truly represent a modern benefit. Among our recommendations, we'd like to highlight the following. 1, quality. Ensure programs approved for the GI Bill deliver sufficient quality worthy of the veteran's hard-earned benefits. 2, overcharging. Ensure schools are not overcharging VA and that VA tuition funds are spent on education. And 3, history. Prohibit schools which have been subject to punitive law enforcement or federal regulatory actions within the last 5 years. Thanks to this subcommittee's work with the new Isaacson-Roe law, when faced with fraud, VA and state approving agencies are supposed to conduct risk-based reviews of schools. This model, developed from the ground up, has been successfully tested and thoroughly vetted by our colleagues at the American Legion, Ed Council, and the National Association of State Approving Agencies. We strongly believe this new model is the blueprint for success when it comes to enacting this congressionally mandated program. We call on VA and the SAs to embrace the pilot and start launching risk-based reviews of problematic schools. For example, in March, a state court judge ruled that Ashford University and its parent company, Zovio Incorporated, would have to pay a $22 million fine for misleading prospective students. The school was guilty of more than 1 million violations nationwide. Ashford was bought by the University of Arizona for $1 and turned into their global campus, known widely as UAGC. We're calling on Arizona to implement the new risk-based model in this case, given the long history of complaints, including from current students. As VA proceeds with modernization efforts, it is crucial for the department to incorporate reporting and outcomes throughout the overall ecosystem. Tracking of metrics cannot be an add-on if you want meaningful results. And for many, the digital GI Bill has been a welcome improvement, which will give student veterans a full view of their benefits. However, given the lack of departmental oversight of the 2018 Forever GI Bill implementation, we're urging the subcommittees to very carefully monitor the digital GI Bill rollout and to expect regular updates from VA, especially as it pertains to understanding student outcomes. As we enter the 15th year since the post-9/11 GI Bill's passage, comprehensive information about the economic impact of this program remains unknown. But since 2016, we've collaborated with VA to spur a one-time interagency data sharing effort to document student outcomes and workforce outcome measures under the post-9/11 GI Bill. The bottom line is this: fraud is a problem, and outcome measures are key to accountability. This concludes our testimony here today, and we look forward to working with you and members of your staff on these important issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. I now recognize Mr. Sharp for 5 minutes. Mr. Sharp, can you hear us okay?
Yes. Chairman Levin, Chairman Marvin, Ranking Member Moore, Ranking Member Rosendale, and distinguished members of these subcommittees, on behalf of the National Commander, Paul E. Dillard, and the nearly 2 million members of the American Legion, we thank you for the opportunity to discuss our recommendations for modernizing veteran education benefits in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. During the pandemic, the education industry moved online virtually overnight, demonstrating the need for revising policy to reflect the current state and long-term trajectory of higher education. Many veterans currently face difficulties seeking online opportunities due to unclear or inconsistent policies between federal agencies. A recent American Legion report highlights the importance of online education as a pathway to degree completion and how changes to Department of Veterans Affairs statutes and regulations can increase military-affiliated student access to high-quality online education. Along with those recommendations, the American Legion believes more must be done to prevent deceptive organizations claiming to provide quality education from taking advantage of veterans and taxpayer dollars. The recent closure of institutions wrought with scandals illustrated the cost of ineffective oversight of academic programs. The American Legion fully supports the expansion of the risk-based survey oversight model for assessing the education quality at all institutions of higher learning. However, the risk-based survey model established under Icason and Roe Act can only be effective to the extent that data on critical institution performance indicators such as graduation rates, closure risk, average debt, and long-time earnings are available for state-approving agencies so they can hold institutions accountable for providing quality education to veterans. Also, Congress must ensure that valuable resources dedicated to addressing veteran workforce development challenges are not wasted. It is disappointing that Congress has yet to extend the sunset debt for VRAP past the current deadline of December 11th, given that hundreds of millions of dollars remain in the program's budget. With 1.2 million veterans still seeking federal assistance, it is unacceptable for funds dedicated to providing economic opportunity for veterans to go unused. Veteran unemployment and underemployment are persistent issues not limited to the COVID-19 era, and current VRAP eligibility requirements prevent many veterans who would benefit from the program from otherwise utilizing these funds. Furthermore, the absence of critical demographic data that could help increase program utilization continues to negatively affect VRAP's ability to generate greater positive outcomes. Congress needs to implement policies expanding VRAP eligibility and outreach to provide veterans with long-term career advancement opportunities. And finally, I would like to thank this committee for marking up HR 6671, which would restore GI benefits to veterans with general discharges. We are grateful to Representative Fitzpatrick and Ranking Member Boss for shining the light on this legislation, and Chairman Takano for amending the bill to include all general under honorable conditions discharges. Chairman Levin, Chairman Marvin, Ranking Member Moore, Ranking Member Rosendale, and distinguished members of the committee, we thank you for providing us the opportunity to explain our position on these programs. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. I'll now recognize Ms. Miller for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to be here today. My name is Rosita Miller, Senior Director of Financial Aid Advising at Broward College. Broward College is a public college located in Broward County, Florida. Annually, we serve more than 58,000 students, which includes approximately 1,000 students that utilize the GI Bill and other military benefits. We offer non-credit and credit, including associate's and bachelor's degrees, providing a range of support services to our students, particularly to military and veteran students through dedicated services and community groups. As a result of its dedication to its students and community at large, Broward College has consistently been recognized by the Aspen Institute and was recently named top 10 finalist of the coveted Aspen Prize. Broward College would like to thank Congress for its creation of the Isaacson and Roe Veteran Health Care and Benefit Improvement Act of 2020, the CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan Act, to ensure that United States veteran students were considered in the face of this unprecedented pandemic. The new legislation has provided benefits and new opportunity for veterans. The digital GI Bill communication makes it easier for veterans to apply for benefits and has improved communication overall. The Edith Norris Rogers STEM Scholarship was revised to incorporate new programs that are now eligible for the scholarship. This has expanded eligibility, allowing students to have access to this scholarship. The CARES Act and American Rescue Plan provided emergency funds to students. The emergency funds ultimately helped students with pandemic-related needs, but also helped with tuition, books, transportation, healthcare, and other educational costs. I've highlighted a few of the benefits that the new legislation provided to veteran students, but I would also like to share some of the challenges that our students and certifying officials are facing. Starting with debt management. Overpayment to eligible persons or veterans changed how debts were created for students that withdrew from classes. Before the enactment of this provision, in some cases, the student would be responsible for directly repaying the tuition debt to the VA. They could set up a payment plan to pay off the debt over 12 months while they were still enrolled in school. With the provision change, schools are responsible for the tuition debt created when students withdraw from classes. The veteran student now has a debt to the school when they withdraw from classes paid by VA funding. Florida state statute dictates that an obligation to the college must be paid in full before a student can register for future classes. This creates a situation where a veteran cannot continue their education until the balance is paid in full. This change has created additional burdens for veteran students when they withdraw from classes. Another major issue for students as well as certifying officials is the fact that the VA debt management system still utilizes the U.S. Postal Service to mail student debt letters to a school when the debt has been created. We have received notifications months after the original debt was created. Lost and late mail creates delays in processing. It would be extremely helpful if debt letters could be received electronically via email or online using a secure portal. I know some of the people on the panel have talked about the enrollment verification process. While it is a great system because it allows students a quick and convenient way to report their enrollment, some of the issues is that most of our students have reported that they're not receiving the text messages or they're receiving them late. This causes either a student not receiving their stipends or monthly payments, so this is another burden to our students. Finally, I would like to recognize our SEO hotline staff for being the most helpful to help resolve student issues. They serve as our unsung heroes that are always willing to help and go the extra mile. I thank you again for having me, and I look forward to any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. I now recognize Mr. Monk for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Levin and Mervan, ranking members Moore and Rosendale, and members of the subcommittees. Thank you for inviting Student Veterans of America to testify before you today on modernizing veterans education in the shadow of COVID-19. SVA has a mission focused on empowering student veterans, and we are committed to providing an educational experience that goes beyond the classroom. We appreciate the opportunity to share our views on the future of veterans education with you, and in my opening remarks, I'll comment on just a few of our recommendations. Our top organizational priority this year is making the temporary COVID protections permanent. The pandemic exposed numerous gaps in VA's authority that prevented the agency from protecting students and their benefits in emergency situations. In response, Congress moved quickly to patch each of these newly exposed holes in the Veterans Education Benefit Support Structure to protect student veterans and their families from a sudden, unnecessary loss in benefits. We cannot thank you all enough for the robust safety net you and your staff worked so hard to create. That safety net was necessary to preserve the basic integrity of the VA education benefits system. As we sit here today, those protections have expired. And without permanent safeguards in place, our nation's veterans are in the same precarious position they were in before the pandemic, armed only with the hope that when the next emergency occurs, and it is a matter of when, not if, Congress will be able and willing to do the right thing again without delay. We should learn from our shared history and make the temporary protections a permanent authority. SVA again thanks Chairman Levin and Representative Mace for their leadership in introducing H.R. 7939, the Student Veteran Emergency Relief Act, which codifies many of these critical stabilizing authorities and is a standout example of the kind of proactive, common sense reforms student veterans and their families deserve. Our next priority is urging Congress to conduct strong oversight of the digital GI Bill modernization effort going on at VBA. SVA has long been a vocal supporter of a full-scale IT modernization effort at VA. The underlying cause of so many historical problems at VA has been the agency's reliance on remarkably old, and in some cases over 50 years old, as the chairman has noted today, information technology systems. To properly serve our veterans, VA education service platforms must become a system that can adapt and change with the evolving landscape of higher education. Thanks to Congress, recently repurposed CARES Act funding has kicked off this years-long modernization overhaul of VA, and to their credit, they have quickly produced a more responsive, modernized suite of tools for school certifying officials and student veterans. Though we're cautiously optimistic, we'd urge Congress to do two things. One, continue funding this effort as the CARES Act money was necessary but likely insufficient to complete the overhaul. And two, conduct strong, purposeful oversight of the process along the way. In the future, VA will likely need more money, and it's critical that they're kept on the positive path they're currently on to avoid a repeat of the well-publicized stumbles the agency has experienced in recent years. The next priority I'd like to mention is the need to better integrate mental health care onto college campuses across the country. Based on our own interactions with student veterans, as well as our public opinion survey data, mental and physical health care are the top two issues student veterans would like to see VSOs focus on in the coming years. SVA believes the intersection of student veteran needs, college campuses, and VA healthcare is a natural fit for more robust offerings and outreach. As an example, an oft-overlooked program that quietly excels is VA's VITAL program. VITAL is a joint effort between VBA and VHA that provides on-campus mental health care and support services to student veterans and, when needed, coordinates with VHA, VBA, and community care providers. When viewed in the light of VA's whole health treatment objective, VITAL's broad portfolio of services stands out as well-designed, flexible, and responsive to the day-to-day needs of student veterans. We encourage the committees to review ways to expand the VITAL program to more campuses across the country through increases in annual funding and by making on-campus access to VA healthcare a top agency priority. SVA would also like to thank Representative Elsie for his leadership on H.R. 5516, the Vital Assessment Act, as well as Chairman Decano for his inclusion of this text in H.R. 6411, the Strong Veterans Act. These bills would produce a report on Vital, the first of its kind, providing Congress with key information to better understand and support the program. The next issue I'd like to mention is the need to reduce some of the administrative burdens the last few years have placed upon VA, state approving agencies, and school certifying officials. The past few years have been full of legislative and regulatory changes at VA, and SVA is incredibly thankful to the members of Congress and their staff for the amazing work that is taken on to get us to this much healthier point in veterans education benefits. Going forward, we'd like to remain cognizant of the greater administrative burden these changes have placed upon VA SAAs and schools, and where possible, we'd like to find ways to streamline the compliance process and address staffing concerns so all parties involved can comply with the new requirements we've all worked so hard to establish. Lastly, I'd like to quickly encourage Congress to conduct a review of the monthly housing allowance benefit for distance learners. The pandemic highlighted the increasingly apparent inequities between distance learner MHA rates and in-person MHA rates. Students enrolled solely in distance learning courses receive an MHA that is half the national average, a difference of potentially thousands of dollars a month when compared to in-person rates. We believe now is the time to review certain fundamental assumptions underlying MHA, and we look forward to working with Congress to ensure MHA meets the needs of today's student veterans. Thank you for your time, attention, and devotion to the cause of veterans and higher education. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Monk. With that, I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions, and just want to start by thanking you all for all the hard work during the pandemic on behalf of our student veterans. Really an extraordinary job. Mr. Hubbard, thank you for your testimony regarding the GI Bill comparison tool. Really appreciated your recommendations on how we can improve it further to ensure prospective student veterans have the information they need to select a school, select a program. Can you talk us through these recommendations, in particular in terms of assigning the risk ratings to schools? How do you suggest that the rating system be developed?
Yes, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple things that we believe need to happen with the GI Bill comparison tool. As you point out, the risk index we think is very important. At present, if a student veteran were to review a school on the platform, there's no way for them to assess the quality of that school. Having some kind of risk index based on a variety of factors that are collected upon by the state approving agencies and by just general outcome measures, we think could substantially improve the ability for students to select a school that's not only going to be a good fit for them, but also a good return on investment for their hard-earned GI Bill benefits. We also think it's imperative that information not be removed from the platform. For example, at present, if a school is pulled off or withdrawn from the program, there's no way to see any information about that school, which makes it very difficult for both advocates as well as the schools, frankly, to understand where they stand with things. We saw in the House of Prayer case, for example, a school that students widely described as a cult, that program stayed on the platform for well over a week, even after being raided by the FBI. We think that's a big problem, specifically the fact that there was no indication of a caution flag or problems with the schools. If there was a student, for example, who was looking at that school at the moment, even after the school had been raided, there would be no way for them to tell. So we think that's a big problem as well.
That certainly sounds like a problem. Thank you very much for that. Ms. Miller, I noted during your remarks, you'd mentioned that some student veterans that you're seeing are not receiving the text messages.
That's correct.
That they're needing to confirm enrollment in school to receive housing benefits. Can you estimate how many students at Broward College you think are not getting the text messages that they need to confirm enrollment?
So I don't have a number per se, because we're finding these cases by students coming in and communicating to us. So I wouldn't be able to give you a number, because we may have some students that are not coming and informing of this issue.
But it's pretty common, you would say? It's been more than a few?
Yes, more than a few, definitely.
Roughly, we're talking dozens, hundreds?
I would say a little more than a dozen.
Okay, that's, it's still substantial. Can you talk through what that delay means for these student veterans, the uncertainty that creates?
Definitely. It's definitely a financial hardship. I mean, a lot of our veteran students, they've decided to return back to school to further their education, so they're not working, and they rely on these housing benefits. So when they have these delays, they're coming into us and they're expressing how this is causing hardships. I mean, they're unable to pay their bills, unable to pay their rent, because they rely on this.
So hopefully this is something we can look into and hopefully resolve. Mr. Monk, I'll turn to you. I thank you for your testimony recommending our subcommittee perform more oversight on digital GI Bill modernization. Your recommendation that VA establish preemptive automatic qualification to transferring service members and electronic certificate of eligibility dispersal was very compelling. Could you discuss how those changes would affect student veterans?
Thank you for the question, Chairman. One of the things that we hear about fairly frequently from student veterans is that they don't really know where to begin the process to find out what their benefits are, what they're eligible for in terms of what they can use for the GI Bill. We hear it also, as an aside, a little bit on how to access VRE and the Chapter 31 benefits there. But the idea of an automatic immediate dispersal of a certificate of eligibility would provide veterans an immediate, at least an estimate, and maybe the compromise case of what they are eligible and what they can use to pursue their higher education goals, instead of waiting on the veteran to finally kind of get that information and get around to applying to the VA and waiting on that process to kind of happen. By the time they separate from service, all of the information that VA needs to make that determination is available to them. So it's simply an act of giving it to them.
Thank you, Mr. Monk. I'll now recognize my friend, the ranking member, for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hubbard, would you please tell me more about your recommendations to improve tracking of outcome measures for the GI Bill by VA?
Thank you for the question, sir. Yes, absolutely. So outcome measures we find to be an imperative part of the overall GI Bill. At present, America does not have an answer to the question, what are we getting for our return on investment in the GI Bill? It's about $12 billion annually, and there's just not a good answer to that question right now. In particular, it's imperative that we look at earnings data for that full economic scope. That's something that our organization has been working on, but we believe that the overall federal government needs to do this as well, and that those outcome measures need to be tied into the infrastructure and the platforms that student veterans are using when they look at reviewing a school. So if you're going to make a decision about where you want to attend, it would seem to make sense that you know what the potential outcomes might be. So we think that's an important part to be included, but also something that is not being looked at, again, is the economic impact, which we think American taxpayers deserve.
So when you say outcome, you're looking at earnings potential, you mean as they use the GI Bill to get a degree? Is that what you're referring to?
So, sir, we're referring to the
So when you say-
long-term impact.
Yeah, earnings.
So, for example, if somebody enters the workforce over a period of time, tying that to, for example, IRS data, to see that, for example, if you get X degree, that potentially your earning impact could be Y.
Gotcha, yeah, that makes sense. I got a couple kids at Auburn, and they're always telling me, hey, Dad, this is about what it's going to pay when I get out, and this is how long it takes. So, okay, and this is kind of a question for any of the witnesses. Have you seen a difference in employment between regular GI Bill participants and the vet tech programs or users? Anybody want to tackle that?
I'll jump in quickly, sir. So I think, the fact that they are separate but complementary programs is important. In today's economy, obviously, we know that short-term degrees can significantly enhance someone's long-term impact, particularly when coupled with a traditional 2 or 4 year degree. So I think it's too early necessarily to say what as I referenced earlier, the long-term economic impact is. But I can tell you that based on the numbers that we've seen so far, it seems low. I think that the long-term impact should definitely be higher over time, but we haven't seen that just yet.
Gotcha. Mr. Monk, would you please elaborate on your concerns regarding the communications between that's being provided to schools by the VA? And I think we've talked a little bit about it with Ms. Miller, but would you discuss that?
Thank you for the question. Our concerns about communications coming from VA extend largely to several of the recent initiatives and revised guidance, particularly around the 8515 rule. VA, a couple of years ago, kind of started reassessing how they wanted supported versus non-supported students to be adjudicated in this ratio, and rolling out this changed implementation as well as the submission and verification process has been riddled with issues. Schools are saying they haven't heard of this. They simply don't know what's going on. VA has said they put out guidance. We know VA, to their credit, has put out guidance in multiple formats. However, all of these different formats have contained at least slightly different information that, while minor, do contribute to substantial differences in how a school will go about complying with these, or what is expected of them, and timelines and things like that. So most of the communication has been well-intended, but even after these issues have been brought to light from schools, SCOs, and other representatives to VA, and meaningful and productive conversations have been had, revised guidance and improved timelines and changes like that have been slow to kind of come out of VA. And so we're still working through today 8515 implementation issues that started almost 2 years ago. So there have been significant delays, and I know that, again, VA's putting forth a good faith effort to try to get communication out, but they're still running into issues along the way.
Gotcha. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
I thank the ranking member, and I'll recognize Ms. Cherfilus McCormick for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Ms. Miller. You spoke about some of the financial hindrances that the students who are receiving the GI are facing. Could you please go into the basic housing allowance issues that they're facing also, and the book supply? And then we can conclude with the personal computing devices that they're using, and if they are actually conducive for them to have a successful career and continue their education.
Yes, thank you for your question. One of the issues when it comes to the housing is, I think Mr. Monk made that mention, for those students that decide that either online learning may be in their best interest, especially, we still have some students that are not able to return back to the campus because of health issues. And when a student is taking classes online, their housing benefits are cut almost in half. And it's just not fair to the student because they're unable to come to the class. So that is something that I think definitely needs to be addressed, because they're still learning, they're still putting in the same amount of effort, they're just not physically at the campus. And as far as when we talk about computers or books, especially for our students that are receiving Chapter 31, a lot of times students are going through their counselors, and their counselors are the ones that are making the decision to say, yes, we will approve you for a computer or we will not. So it's not consistent. And that's something that needs to be addressed as well, because it shouldn't be that it's on a case by case. It should be something overall. If a student is entitled to it, let's do it. Let's provide them with these resources to make them successful.
Now, in your written testimony, you talked about the students who are actually doing clinical hours and clinical time. Do they have issues with housing also?
So one of the, in that testimony there, I did meet with my VA coordinator, and she's the one that, directly works with students, and so students communicate with her a lot, and they share some of these concerns. So when it comes to students that are doing their clinical hours, while though this is not just a problem for VA students, this is students across the board. This is something that we would just like to be maybe looked at in the future, because in these cases, the students is based on the amount of hours or amount of credits that they're taking. And while we understand that the VA is looking at paying the students based on the credit hours, so that might not be something that can change. It's because if a student is only taking a class that is 3 credits, that's what they're going to be paid at. But it's just that that 3 credits, the student is still spending that amount of time. It's still an 8-hour day, but they're not paid that way. So that's just something that we were just giving as a recommendation.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the gentle lady for her questions, and I'll recognize Mr. Cawthorn for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this question is for any of the witnesses that desire to answer. If you had to summarize your testimony, what do you see as the #1 issue that needs to be addressed to improve the GI Bill?
I can jump in on that, sir, very quickly. I think the biggest challenge that we see is the fact that fraud is unfortunately quite pervasive. When a student veteran applies to use their GI Bill, the expectation is there's an implied stamp of approval at VA. They believe that they're going to go to a school that is of quality, that will have a good return on investment, and that will provide them with a strong career opportunity at the end of it. Unfortunately, for too many student veterans, that turns out to not be the case. As we saw in the House of Prayer example, there were literally hundreds of students that ended up in a cult, as they described. And so that's certainly not what I think any American wants to see as an outcome for some of our veterans.
And this question, again, is for anybody that wishes to answer, but I know that we have a major desire to transfer the VA system to a more modernized system. What have we heard from our veteran community about how they think that transfer is going?
While we all appreciate the changes in this new communication, a lot of our veterans are still expressing how they're still having issues with the VA system overall, especially, like I mentioned in my earlier statement, the fact that we're still utilizing the mail system. I mean, in this day and age, you would think that we would all be able to have a system online to make this an easier process. I mean, it's taken us months when it comes to resolving a student debt. And it's not only an issue for the student, but it's also an issue for the certifying officials. So while I know that we're making improvements, I think that it's time that we really, put the pedal to the metal and increase this in a much faster effort if we can.
And forgive me for my ignorance, but is there any movement or plan to try and create something, as simple as an iOS app or an app that can go on an iPhone where someone could just go in and be able to use an automized system to where they could utilize what the VA has to offer?
That wouldn't be a question that I could answer. I think that would be for like the first panelists.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you all very much. With that, yield back.
Thank my colleagues for the questions. Thank all of our witnesses. If there are no further questions, we can bring this hearing to a close. Again, my thanks also to our first panel for sticking around to hear from our VSOs and our education advocates. Thank everybody for their hard work throughout the last few years during this difficult time. All members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include additional materials. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.